Thank you for doing this interview for Attack of the Doc.
Of course.
We worked together on field shoots, traveling, San Diego Comic-Con, many things.
Oh, yeah.
It's a pleasure to talk to you, hear your voice, and see you again after so many years.
Chris, so good to see you.
Well, I want to ask, like, I don't know your story. Like, how did you get the job at Attack of the Show? How did you get into G4? So what was like your gateway into the network?
Oh God, that's a hard question to answer. I was a cameraman for reality TV before, and just hustling through Hollywood. And I met a buddy of mine named Chuck Fry, who was a PA editor on a commercial shoot, and he had a buddy who was staffing up positions over at G4, and they put me in touch with him, and I went in to go talk with Brent Schwabel, who was doing the hiring, and Brent was like, well, you're not going to get rich here, but you're going to have a lot of fun. And at 26, 7 years old, I was like, okay, let's do it. And man, he wasn't lying. I had some of the best times over at G4, working with you guys on Attack of the Show, and just traveling, doing all the things video game related. And at the time, I was a big video game player, and I had seen that they had some games like SOCOM on TV, and that was the game I was playing at the time. So I was just like, oh, this is serendipity that this game show that I watched, they're calling me to work there, so I'm going to go check it out. And it's insane.
What were, like, in terms of some of the milestones, if you can think back, there are a lot of milestones of the show, right? There are milestone things that happened on camera, like Olivia jumping in a pie.
Oh, yeah.
Or the race when Kevin and Olivia were in fat suits. Or the Olivia's first day on the job. Or Olivia's maybe first...
I remember actually putting a mic on Olivia for her test shoot when she came into G4, the offices there off of Olympic. Her very first test shoot, she came in and we were like, oh, we're going to audition for a new host. And we had already been auditioning for hosts, to accompany Kevin. And in walked this girl who was just kind of, she was the fit. She was loud. She was kind of tomboy-y in her mannerism of speaking. And, a great face for television. And then after the interview, she was hired, and I was still just like, of course that was the girl that we were going to hire to be Kevin's sidekick. And it turned out pretty quick that she was a big part of the show and just its popularity and its growth. I think one of the milestones is we'd always do these crazy episodes for E3 where we'd go down there and shoot just mega content, and we would capture it for 3-4 days and stream them live packages right into the live show and the countdown ticker for when we would be dropping information about Xbox or PlayStation. It was a surreal kind of event space, broadcasting space where it came together, and we were making this television where kids were tapped into this event. And it's something that I've grown up with my entire video game life. And so it was really cool to watch and be a part of to make that. So those are kind of some milestones for me.
Tell me about that audition, the first audition for Olivia. Can you remember some of the other women who auditioned to be the co-host? I know Whitney Cummings was one of them.
Yes, Whitney was one of them. There were so many, and I just, at the time, we had only gotten to really do the tape test for, the talking test for Olivia. I think after she'd already been picked by the executives, but I just remember seeing her and talking with her in one of those little, green rooms, and she was just bringing all the heat and not pulling any punches. And we were like, wow, this girl's really going, going head toe to toe with everybody, and she was hired. Yeah, it was an incredible time.
Tell me about any other sort of milestone firsts, right? You were at the first audition of Olivia on Attack of the Show. Were there other things like her first appearance on camera, or the first time that you guys went on a field shoot together, or the first? So think of like firsts.
I remember one of the first times that I think she and I had gone on a lengthy field shoot was to go to Tokyo, and we covered, I think it was the first or second American Ninja Warrior going to compete on the Sasuke there, and I think we were there for about 10 or 12 days out there, because once you get out there, you have to get acclimated and travel time, and we went to the Mount Midoriyama, and she is, I believe, part Japanese, so she was just like bright-eyed everywhere we went, and brought her Olivia Munn sass with her, which I remember sometimes would make a few of the guys from the Tokyo Broadcasting Service a little bit nervous and a little bit left scratching their heads, but she made for great TV.
I remember her the same way.
Yeah, just super.
I kind of feel like she wasn't just on camera with you; she was like challenging you, poking you.
Exactly. Yeah, and off camera the same way. She was just on, ready to go, and in that host, light of hers, and just like was just really quick and crass and sassy, and just held a room, and it was great. And Kevin's the same way. Like he's on screen, he's just like hard to not look at and listen to. And so the two of them together was just like this dynamic. And then when he'd make her jump in the pie, or all of the all the crazy things, she would always get kind of stuck doing the crazy field shoots. And I remember her just remarking, being like, "This is what I got to do to be in Hollywood,"
Well, I mean, it led to great things for her. I mean, look at, but I will say, like, just working with her, what I appreciated, and Kevin as well, was they raised the bar for me, right? Like, yeah. I got better because they were good. I mean, I came from just being a writer. I wasn't an on-camera guy. But what I mean is that, like, okay, when things went well on the show,
yeah,
they were great. And when things went bad on the show, they were great.
Exactly.
So, like, when things went wrong, like Olivia mispronouncing McHammer, right?
Yeah.
Like, that was a moment, like, what I always appreciated about the two of them is that they rolled with the punches, right?
Exactly.
Like, no matter what happened, it was just like, well, it's live.
That's live TV, yeah.
We can't do it. So can you recall in your brain, like, just like this was a best or this was a worst but turned out to be great? Like, can you tell some stories that you were witness to where you can recall a memory of, like, oh my God, that was just like...
I remember them. They would always do these challenges where they'd have to put some shit in their mouth, and I think it was the marshmallows that they kept making Olivia stuff into her mouth. I think it was the Chubby Bunny challenge, and she was stuffing marshmallows in her mouth. I don't know how many she had in there, but when she was done, she was just spitting them out, and it was like one of those clown cars where you couldn't stop spitting out enough they just kept coming out of her. I was like, where did she hide those? Like, how big are those cheeks? She had some big cheeks. That was a pretty funny moment. And I remember, like, the time they brought in the kiddie pool full of pudding and had her jump in the pudding. I was like, these poor PAs. I remember the poor PAs having to pick that up. And luckily my job was already over, so I would just get the hell out of there really quick. But yeah, like, things like that were just incredible. I remember when she did one of the funniest things, she made the cover of Maxim magazine. If you remember what that was. And I remember the time being like, oh man, I have to get this girl to give me the autograph. And so I, shyly was like, hey, I'm like a 30-year-old man at the point. Hey, Olivia, sign this Maxim cover with you on it. And she writes, Joesh, I love when you put your hand down my shirt. Love, Olivia. And I had to take that thing home and be like, to my then wife, like, oh no, it's just part of my job. Literally, it's just part of my job. And I have to answer every time somebody used to ask me, is that the part your job that you love the most? I would just be like, not really. It's kind of the most uncomfortable part of the job that you have to deal with.
Oh man, it's if you think of it, like, in our conversation, if you, like, recall a memory of another, like, best and or worst moment or an anecdote like that, feel free to just, like, segue to that.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So, because you can always come back to that. Those are, like, sort of isolated, self-contained little stories.
Yeah.
In terms of like the field shoots, you were very involved in a lot of the field shoots. Tell me about sort of like the best moments from the field shoots. I mean, everything from like Tokyo. You were at San Diego Comic-Con,
We
right?
would do a lot of conning. We would do a lot of conventions. We would go to EDC or GDC, the Game Developers Conference, where we would go to San Francisco and we would watch devs make a video game in 24 hours, or over the course of a weekend. And then also check out what other video game developers were putting out at the time, and it was really exciting to be in the space to see which games are coming out next and which ones were the newest game on the newest consoles, and all of the bells and whistles that would come with it. And it's just, if you're a gamer, that kind of thing is very special to be involved with and be able to see that thing firsthand before anybody else, and then kind of bring it to a big platform like G4, which was really awesome. One of the best things about going to the cons and traveling, we would just get a lot of swag. So you'd be swagged out with hats and shirts and stuff from different games and developers, and that was always very fun because then people would just be like, oh shoot. And then after like the first year, you're like, I don't want another bag of swag bags at all. And then next thing you know, you've got like just lanyards for days. I don't know if you remember, but you just have lanyards from every kind of con and movie release, because we were covering movies too at the time, like you said, a lot of Batman. And what else? We did the 30th anniversary of Star Wars. We took Sessler and Morgan out there. I think it was Indianapolis. We dressed them up as Han. No, we dressed Sessler up as Lando Calrissian, and of course Morgan was Princess Leia, and walked around the con, and it was just like they were the biggest attraction there at this 30th anniversary of Star Wars. It was insane.
Another question I have is about like the fans, right? And how fans reacted, because uniquely, when you're in the studio, you're in the studio, it's interns and producers and writers clapping.
Yeah. We were in the field a lot, and that was one of the things with, a lot of our female hosts, the Blair Herders, and the Kevin Pereiras, the other hosts, the Zach Selwins. We didn't have to really run security on them so much, because they were kind of, they're guys, they're bigger guys, and larger than life personalities. It kind of like kept people at bay. But a lot of times with our female hosts like Morgan and Sarah Underwood and even Olivia at times, people would, have this strong urge to just want to throw an arm around them. And so I was constantly playing boom guy / bodyguard boom guy to a lot of these like kind of rabid host fans. And, it was not a bad gig to have, because you would get, gratitude from our talent would be grateful that we would be doing that for them. And my partner Mike Dunn and I would always kind of be like a moving wall of technical items to keep people at bay from walking right up, putting an arm around talent. It was a lot of fun.
I remember that. I remember being around Blair Butler at San Diego Comic-Con.
Oh,
and
God.
It was like you're escorting, the next Marvel actor.
Right. Yeah, because people,
it was crazy.
The fans at G4, whatever their vertical assignment to the genre that they watched the network for, that was the host they fixated on. If they loved comic books, they would focus and fixate on Blair Butler. If they loved like UFC or wrestling or stuff like that, they would fixate on Blair Herder. If they loved video games and like they were on Sessler and Webb, and if they were they were just obsessed with these people like to a level of like let's put them on this pedestal. And it was so fun to watch because these people took it with such grace. I didn't see any of them like turn into big egos, or there were still people that we could turn to, we would travel with all the time and still have time to get food with after a shoot. There were some of the, like I said before, some of the best times I've ever had working at a network was at G4, just from the fans, from going in to create the content sometimes the day of. We would go in and they would say, okay, we've been greenlit to do this shoot today. let's shoot it, and let's shoot it before 3 o'clock, so or before noon, so we could get it edited and we can roll it into the 3 o'clock show. And some of the things we would shoot, we were shooting day before, sometimes day of, and it was just like, it was one of those times where it was like, get the shot, get the thing done. And it was before social media was a huge thing, so people would turn on their TV and go straight to it. And it was just like, wow, we're creating content ahead of the curve, day of, and turn it around for broadcast, nationally at 3 o'clock. It was great.
It's shocking there's not anything like it today. It really was unique for its time. And even I experienced that, like going to Comic-Con and being surrounded by people, but none of the male talent ever had an issue. The female talent, people were just kind of in, you could see like this could be a problem because there's so many.
Right.
With male talent, we could kind of walk freely and just like dudes are like, hey, and it's, it was much easier to traverse. But do you have any like funny stories of like fans and how they like would approach the talent?
I think one time, was Olivia wearing Slave Leia at one of the E3s or Comic-Cons, and fans were just like because she looked so much like, I guess, Carrie Fisher in the outfit, fans were just losing their minds trying to get pictures with her, and we would just have to like cover up and get her out of the venue. We're like, just get out of here, let's just go. It was just hilarious.
I would argue she looked better than Carrie Fisher.
I mean,
she who wore it best?
Exactly.
Who wore it best? What about like from the perspective? It's weird, look like when you're on the inside, right?
Yeah.
But the perspective about like the legacy of Attack of the Show and G4, like how people responded to it. I feel we live in a very different time now as opposed to when G4 started. My feeling is back in, I joined in March of 2005.
Right.
And G4 had already been going for several years.
Right.
And I was on 3 episodes of Screensavers, then it turned into Attack of the Show.
Exactly.
And Attack of the Show wasn't in 2005 what it became years later.
Right.
But it was a different time in the sense that I felt that there was more a sense of celebration of all the cool, whether it was a new phone, a new tech device, a new computer, a new game system, gaming. It was like almost at every level there were like cool things happening in pop culture, and I see things sort of where there was an enthusiasm, a passion, and excitement then. I don't see the same thing now. Do you have any thoughts about the legacy and sort of G4's kind of place in pop culture history and what it all means? I know that's a broad question,
right?
But you were a part of it, taking a step back, and now that you've had the distance of time, because now by the time that this movie comes out, it'll have been 10 years since the network ended. Wow,
that's amazing. That's so crazy to think that it's 10 years since we haven't had a G4. Gosh, what have I done in my life? I think that one of the biggest things that was a marvel for G4 is that it created a sense of community within this small kind of marginalized community already that people didn't really look at as cool or as hip. And they made these people hip and cool. G4 was for nerds. It was for like people that played video games, or people that were afraid to say that they were nerds that played video games. I was one of those people. Until you find your community and where you can fit in with people, I think G4 opened a lot of those doors for not only its people that work there, but its audiences and people that watched and supported the show. Now they would do a lot of things just around the lifestyle of gaming. So there was things like art and music that was celebrated. A lot of it, comic book or fine art. We would have cover art gallery openings, with themes of comic book and or video game characters. And those were some of the fun events to see the crossover into the lifestyle and creating the pop culture fandom throughout all of what G4 was trying to accomplish was just incredible and great to be a part of. They would always go to a spot called Gallery 1986 where artists would develop artwork based around Star Wars or based around Mario, or the favorite games from the 60s or the 80s. And it was so fun to see and be a part of a community that was now not so thought of as undesirable to be in or be associated with, and be welcomed. It was really cool. It's a beautiful thing.
You were 100% right, because at the time G4 even started in early, was it 2002?
2002, and I think 2004 is right when I joined. And I remember, it was like Call for Help, and Screensavers were at the time, and the game or the show that Kevin had first hosted, was his first co-hosting gig. Arena with the big guy, where they did, that was like the very first broadcast esport I've ever seen, and that's what drew me to the network. Is I thought these people are on the cusp of doing something huge with esports and competitive gaming, and I was drawn to that side of the network, which really never made its mark in said world, but they did try to bring light to some things like the Madden Challenge. Like I remember one year they sent us out to go to Vegas for the Madden Challenge, the very first annual Madden Challenge that was sponsored by EA Sports and Madden. And I mean, aside from me losing my per diem check for the week and one night, I had a great time out there, like I had a great time watching people play this game that I'd only seen played at my house with friends who were better than me or vice versa. And they were on this completely different level, and we were broadcasting it. And I thought that was really neat to see, and probably the future of gaming and sports, coming together. And I kind of wished that G4 had stayed more in that competitive esport realm, that arena. And I remember making suggestions about it, and then people were just like, no, people don't want to watch that. People don't watch that at all. And now who lives in our old home? Riot Games, League of Legends. So that's, pays homage to what we were doing. We were doing it right, and we were in the right facility to do it. And they're broadcasting now to millions upon millions per view, per day views of live, esport competitive gaming. And I think that was like really one of the things that drew me to G4 in the very beginning, was arena, that aspect of it.
Well, my understanding is that the new network, they're going to lean heavily into esports. I mean, there'll be pop culture stuff around the edges, but it's mostly the new G4 is going to be centered on esports, which I think is really smart.
That is a very smart thing to do, and I think that's one of the things that if they had that foresight, would be a different. We'd probably not even be in the middle of making this doc. We'd probably all still have jobs creating content around characters and players and player profiles and things of that nature, like delving into more of why they're choosing these maps for these games, or why they're putting these different obstacles in the games for the competition factor. All sorts of different questions you can ask yourself and play like Monday Morning Quarterback. But I think what happened at the end of the day was G4 was ahead of its time. They were following the curve of broadcast and not the core of what they were doing, of what they believed in. Like following your heart. We were gamers, and then we kind of got distracted by the money and started chasing the pop culture bubble, and it was just, I think we had it going like for a long time, really, really well. I'm glad that they're going to get back into competitive gaming.
Well, I think it's going to be a very different thing, but I think you hit the nail on the head. G4 was ahead of its time, which is why it failed. The market wasn't ready for it yet, right?
Yeah.
Now with streaming, I think this is like, my understanding is that when the network relaunches, I heard this from Blair Herder, who I've spoken to, it's going to be a 24/7 network live. It's also going to be on. It's going to be on cable, but it's also going to be on like Peacock and its own streaming app.
Right, as it should.
So, yeah, exactly. I feel like it's like, the technology's caught up to what G4 should have been all along.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, G4 was the purveyors of a lot of things, if you think about it. Before there was Tosh.0, we had Around the Net. before there was American Ninja Warrior, we were already broadcasting Ninja Warrior as, hey, you guys should take a look at some of this stuff. We were ahead of the curve in creating content and culture for a community that was idolizing what's next kind of feeling. What's next? What's going to be next? And we had our thumbs on the pulses of all of that. That was so cool.
You said it so well. That's awesome. I want to get also some anecdotes about other people who were on the show. And part of the reason I'm kind of like, asking for this stuff is like, just from a legal standpoint, I can't really, like, for a doc, in order to get fair use to be able to use certain footage, like if you talk about something, I can show that.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
So I want to talk about some of the other hosts that you had interactions with. I mean, we worked together. I know you worked with Sarah Underwood on some stuff. Like, do you want to go through and maybe like if you have an anecdote or two about other hosts that you worked with? And you can come back to this one.
Yeah, I remember working with Allison Hayslip, and I think we were covering like a Long Beach, like the Long Beach Grand Prix or something like that, something down in Long Beach. And I remember asking her, like, and this is like just a comment on how cool and hip kind of G4 was at the time. I was like, hey, how'd you get this gig? Like what made you want to come out here and be a host on G4? She goes, oh, well, I just came out here to do acting, and I was a bartender, and a producer walked in and said, hey, you'd be pretty good in front of the camera. And sure enough, she was hired, and she was really good in front of the camera. I couldn't believe it. The G4 made a lot of people's dreams come true, and it was really special to watch and be a part of. And she was always perfect on set, and would come in with the best attitude. And a lot of us would just be like, oh, no, we got to lift these cameras and these booms again. But she was just so bright and bubbly, never had a bad thing to say about anybody. And that goes for the most of the hosts were like that, at the time. They were such a treat to work with and fun. Every Friday we would shoot Blair Butler's comic book stand-ups over at the what was that comic book store off of Sunset?
Was it Golden Apple Comics?
That was down on Melrose. We would do that,
right.
but then it went to the one that the Meltdown Comics that had all of the toys and stuff. We would we'd spend Fridays there shooting that, for her Monday roll-in for the comic book thing, and it was just like, it was so much fun to listen to what the new Walking Dead comic was going to be, and she knew all of them. That was her deal at the time, and every time we would go to do any kind of EA office visits with Sessler, or we would go to Blizzard or BlizzCon with Morgan, they were so into the games, and they knew so much about the games. They played games at home. I would just listen to the questions they would ask, and they would always ask great questions that would lead to, a little hunk of nugget of information about the game that they would probably possibly try to leak to us before anybody else. And that was like their specialty, and then of course Zach Selwyn, this guy that comes out of nowhere and has a great voice and can do all these great voices, and he was probably one of the best freestylers and can play a guitar like no one's business. This tall, kind of honky-tonk guy who loved video games and sports and the intersection of the lifestyle. And I was just like, this guy is incredibly great and a great burst of energy on screen. When we'd go out on a field shoot, he would just be insanely awesome. Oh, we had a show called Street Fury with Big C for a while. I don't know if you remember Big C. I would get sent to go do shoots with that guy all the time, and we would drink quite a bit during some of those like ends of those shoots. Like those travel days would be long, so we'd shoot like a car show, and then after the car show, we'd all go out to have dinner, and then dinner would turn into drinks, and then we would just be at a club, and then showing up the next day, for us to get into a car, and they would whip him in a car on a hangover. It's just like sick as hell, just puking on the side of like a shack. It was like one of the most insane times ever. We were doing Formula D, and all of the guys that were doing Formula D and drifting. It was the first drifting show on television that we put on, and we got to go to the mountains of Tokyo, the Togeis in Tokyo, and see where they actually invented the sport of drifting. It was insane. It was an insane ride to go do that.
Well, it's weird. You mentioned Allison Hayslip, I think was a natural.
Yeah.
Like, she was just like on camera, so comfortable. So Blair Butler, I kind of felt a kinship with, because like myself, she was a writer and kind of reluctant to be on camera, and even like reluctant to be thought of as like an attractive woman that dudes were into, and so
a lot of her Canadian came out. She said, "I'm sorry" a lot. Yeah.
And then Zach has to be probably the most fun in terms of like hanging out, because you knew, and I run into him like at South by Southwest, the film festival, like after G4 ended, and we'd be like, "Hey, what do you do?" He's there for music, I'm there for film, and of course we hang out and drank at the Jackalope, probably one of the best bars on 6th Street.
Yeah.
Do you have any other anecdotes?
I would be remiss if I didn't bring up my good friend Will O'Neill. Will O'Neill was a writer and on Attack of the Show, and he was a host who would do the gadget prawn, and we would have to shoot, a phone or a gadget, and the most monotonous kind of shoot where you're literally sitting on a turntable and shooting it, and then having him be like, "We can see the glare, don't do that." And it's like, what would be normally just like, "Oh, we hate this." We loved working with Will. Whenever he would get on a shoot assigned to us, we would just be like, yes. If we were ever out traveling to do a field assignment with Will, the best. We knew we were going to have the best time, and just would always put us on to the coolest, newest shit. Will O'Neill was great. One of the other great shows.
Sorry, he was one of my favorites to work with.
Oh, yes.
We rarely got to work it, but like when he was on set, I just always loved chatting with him. So sorry, I just wanted to.
No, I love that guy, and I love working on. We develop or. G4 was great at developing stuff for the net before it was even popular. Frank Meyer developed a show called Freestyle 101, and it would bring in freestyle or rappers who had verses or wanted to work on verses, and we would put them in a studio and just talk about the art of freestyling and what it meant to them and how they did it. And that show, I forget how many episodes we shot. I even did a freestyle. I got to get up and do a freestyle of my own for April Fool's when we didn't have any rappers show up. Because sometimes in that world, the artists are too busy to show up. So I stepped in and handled my business. But those kind of things where it was just all-encompassing. And G4, it was all-encompassing. It was everything that you could think of as far as gaming is concerned.
I watched Attack of the Show, obviously. Yeah. Whenever I saw myself, though, I didn't like to ever watch myself on camera. It's like, when you don't like the sound of your own voice, like I can't listen to it. It's grating to me. But I watched all the other stuff. I watched the show. And one of the things that struck me, especially going through footage, we're going through footage, to put together this doc, and I'm watching some of this stuff, I'm like, holy shit. I'm not even talking about like certain segments, right? I'm talking about like just offhand comments that Kevin and Olivia would make, or things that I said that I'm like cringing going, if any of us said any of these things today, we would be canceled like that. Like, right. We would be gone. So what are your memories of some of like maybe the most crazy over the top things that you witnessed, or even whether you were there or not, you saw it, and then sort of segue that into, could Attack of the Show be done now? Can it even be done now, right? Can lightning strike twice?
I mean, I think the show was great when it had its time. Its moment was just right for the picking to have that type of live show. I think it could definitely go the way of what other social sites are doing with live, and have that kind of live element to it. Not too overproduced, I think. And the main goal that was brought up about Attack of the Show was that it was just a fun show to watch and to be a part of, because it felt like you were a part of it. They were bringing something to your living room that was new and unique. And now it's going to be kind of hard because there's the live element on everyone's phone. You know, what's going to make them switch from watching that to maybe watching me in the shower, or somebody doing something else, you know, completely different. And this is, it's a 15-second time span now people have for attention. And I think Attack of the Show today would have to be 100 times what it was 10 years ago. You know, and I think that's asking a lot from from a show and from people, you know, especially when we have the disposable, you know, entertainment button of our thumb to just swipe next and go to the next thing and go up and down and wait. You know what I'm saying? Like, the content would have to be massive.
Well, it's the TikTok generation, right? Like,
Yeah.
how does Attack of the Show compete with, you know, not only other shows, but just TikTok, right? Like that's what, and it's interesting when you look at the data, like watching film and television is number 5 on a list of Gen Z's list of top 5 things to do.
Right.
It's movies and TV are 5.
Right.
There's 4 other things that come ahead of that, which is like video games and TikTok and like,
Yeah.
like there's
social media and all of the things that are taking precedent over, you know, things that are more important. Like, I don't know, maybe watching our CO2 output and you know, our carbon footprint on this earth. It's some, you know, I get that isn't a real heavy, you know, topic to talk about, but it's something that you have to think about when we're stuck to our phones and, you know, our different screen devices, just kind of like watching the world slip away.
Well, I want to segue to, and if there's anything else that I asked earlier, like best and worst moments,
Right.
host anecdotes, if you think of something while we're chatting, like, you know, feel free to segue into that.
Okay.
But I want to get into the cancellation of Attack of the Show, like how you personally experienced it. You know, for almost a year before it happened, there were rumors. I feel like there was like G4 was on the bubble, right?
Yeah.
And always this is going to happen. And there'd be certain people that just like, you know, we're doom and gloom, you know, Chicken Little, the sky is falling. And I was just like, well, until they say anything, we don't really know. So there's no point in getting worked up about it.
Right.
And I personally felt extremely lucky.
Yeah.
Because I never worked on a show that lasted that long. All the TV shows I'd done previously had lasted 2 seasons.
Right.
So 2 years. And this was like, we were like in our like 7th year, right? Going on an 8th year, at least for me.
Right.
And the network had been around like, I don't know, 3 years.
A few years before that, yeah.
So how did you experience it? When did you find out? Were you in the room when everyone was told?
Yeah.
Like, can you tell me from your perspective how you experienced the cancellation and your feelings about it?
Oh man, that was a tough one. I remember for maybe a year ahead of time, you know, you would hear little rumors around the water well about, hey, they're making big changes. Our parent company is restructuring. Everybody's kind of like biting back. So there was a little bit of a fear going around, you know, the production offices. And as a crew member, I kind of had job security because there still needed to be content to be made. So we were used until the very, very last day. It wasn't, you know, like we were like, oh, well, I wrote my last thing and, you know, I'm going to have to still be here for the next couple of weeks or months, or maybe I can take my, you know, my vacation time. No, we were there creating content to the very last day. And it was sad to be told, you know, we're going to come into an office. They brought us all in there. And I remember them bringing everybody into offices in groups and being like, you know, we're shutting the network down. This will be your last month, you know. And it came at a time when I was already, already going through the loss of my dad. And I was like, damn, like this kind of sucks, you know, like I'm going to lose this cool job that Pops was really proud of me having for so long, because he knew in television that was a legacy and a lifetime. And I knew at the end of this job, well, I didn't know, but, you know, I was with him by his side throughout the entirety of the end of the network. And then the network closed, and I, you know, lost Dad a few months later, and it was like, man, it was tough. Just a lot of chapters closed for me in that year, and I was like, damn. And a lot of friendships that I curated for 10 years were instantly gone. It was like the end of, the end of school, when a lot of people went their own separate ways, and Hollywood is hard. Some people don't make it. They go home, or they go to another market and they work there, or they pick up on a new crew and then they just vibe with them better. It's just it was like one of the most massive breakups, and transformative years I've ever had to go through. And I still think back on it like, boy, that was like, at the time I didn't think that would be the best part of my life, but now I'm like, fuck, that was like one of the best times of my life. Going through the worst time of my life, and it was also one of the best times of my life. If that makes any sense at all.
It does. I lost my father the same year.
Yeah.
At the end of 2012, it was like the day after Christmas.
Yeah.
I flew out and I sat in the hospice with him and never went to a hotel. I just slept in a chair the whole weekend, and he passed away that Sunday night right after. It was like an out of body experience. So
Yeah.
I know what that's like, and it's just like, and it was like I lost my father, I lost my girlfriend, I lost the job that in retrospect ended up being one of the best experiences in my professional career. So
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
man, I just don't even know, like, I didn't even think about it until you brought that up. It's just like that all like, and then now, like, I just hope this is a way for all of us to reconnect. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. I mean, the human factor alone, like losing contact with that many people that you're around for 10 years straight almost, and newcomers would come, kind of later in the game, but like you're with, I hate to sound like, a cliche, but it's like a family, like all of these people that you see for 10 hours, some 12 hours a day, sometimes longer. You see them more than your own family, and some people like myself, lost relationships, like you lost relationships due to the fact that you work so much, or that you are just busy with the emotions of picking up all of these people that you are constantly working with, and it's and then to lose all that overnight in the blink of an eye, you're just kind of like, wow, it's a lot of loss.
It was definitely like experiencing a death.
Yeah.
Because all those people were suddenly ripped out of your life at one time. At least for myself, I know, some people still continue to work like at E! Or like that network, but it would never be the same. There was and it was weird to walk in the offices. My strange experience with it was almost like the cool people and the nerds, and the cool people were the people who worked at the Style Network.
Right.
And they were like much more fashion forward, for lack of a better word. And they were maybe better looking, and I'm not trying to insult any of but it was the nerds, which was G4 and whatnot. So that was just so weird. I mean, I have a couple other questions, but I don't know how important really they are compared to like what you just said, because you kind of crystallized everything for me, like in that. I guess I would just end with asking, like, is there anything I didn't ask that you want to impart? And also, like, I can interview you again, or if you're like, oh, I just have a story to tell, like we've got about 50 hours of audio interviews so far.
Yeah.
By the time I'm done interviewing everyone, I'll have like about 100 in terms of audio assets.
Yeah.
We built a library of about 300 hours of video footage categorized, and now we're collecting and categorizing photos, and we've been putting together kind of the spine of the story.
Okay.
Is there anything, there was one story, and I don't know if you were a part of this or not. Mike Shaw, like when they came up with the name for Attack of the Show, they, a lot of people didn't like the name. They thought it was kind of lame, right?
Yeah.
And he wrote this really passionate essay and even read it aloud in front of people. Who was I talking to? This one of the producers, Brian, who broke down in tears, like telling me about his experience of hearing that, right? Like just hearing Mike Shaw, like read this, like this is what Attack of the Show is. It's this, they're this, we're Lord of the Rings. They're this, we're Star Wars.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Were you there for that? Do you remember that?
I wasn't. A lot of production meetings and stuff happened like behind closed doors, and most people that were field were either out in the field or getting ready to be out in the field. So we would just get our marching orders and go do that kind of thing. Which is yeah.
Sorry. No, I guess my question is, like, is there anything I didn't ask or something you want to expand upon or something in the course of our talking you're like, oh, I wanted that story?
Oh, man. You pretty much hit it on the head for me. It was making me go back and think about it. The whole experience, just G4 itself was just really good for a lot of people, and I think a lot of audience members as well. It just really gave people a voice that were voiceless.
I agree. I really hope that this doc will kind of remind people of that time when I think we were kinder to each other.
Yeah.
I really do believe that we were kinder to each other then. Yeah. And I see the way people even I know, and I'm like, how could you say this about someone who you don't know?
Right.
And the sort of insanity that we're seeing, I think, mostly exacerbated by social media and the way it divides people in it.
Yeah.
And I hope with this doc is it will just remind people of a time when we didn't do that.
Yeah.
When I'm happy to argue with you about which is the best Iron Man movie.
Exactly.
I'm not going to dislike you because you have a different opinion.
Yeah,
right? I think that's an adult way of looking at things. So my hope is that this doc will just remind people of that time and like show that like this is when nerds were more united and maybe even the world was a bit more united. So
yeah, I agree.
That's why the approach is to make it a period documentary. So you feel like you're in that time, like the music and everything, the photos, it's just going to be like this, 90-minute, barrage of memories.
I love it.
Yeah. Joesh, thanks. This is, God, I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm gonna follow up with like just some stuff, to sign a release,
sure.
And then if you can start to dig through and find like photos and whatnot.
I've got a couple of videos and some photos I could totally put on a drive and send you. I'll Dropbox it to you.
And then, send me this audio too that you just recorded as the WAV file.
I will. I'll do that too.
Awesome. All right, pop me that audio and I'll hit you up for other stuff later.
Thanks, Chris. Good talking with you, bud.
Great talking to you. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye.